in the mixer window especially. And that mixer window, it mimics, of course, a mixing desk. Oh, sorry. And just like all the mixing desks, it has on the bottom fader. The fader is the level, obviously. And after this, you have 4 small buttons. This is a solo. When you press it, you're gonna listen only that microphone or track, because it might be recorded source on that track, or it might be a sample, or it might be a synthesizer, or whatever that makes sound. So the solo is to listen only it. The mute is not to listen only it. The opposite thing. The I button, okay, it's not working even here because you don't have, you're gonna listen the input which is going to that channel. You can put the inputs to any of the physical inputs in your interface from input output settings. And if you put some input here, and if you press this input button, you're gonna start to listen what's coming in. That means that you're not gonna record it because you're stopped, but you'll be able to hear if there is incoming signal from somewhere else, from bus or from microphone or from guitar or from whatever. Or if you attach to the analog inputs, external synthesizer or something. You got it? And that means that you're gonna listen it all the time, even if you if you press play, but it's not gonna record. If you want to record, you have to press the other one, the red. That means that it's a record already enabled for that track. And if we start to record, it's gonna record only this one, and all the other tracks around it is gonna be played. So you can record something like this. Of course, in our situation, when we have chamber orchestra, solo instruments, or full orchestra, we have to we need to have inputs. Excuse me. And we need to have inputs to all the channels that we're gonna record. And if we press play, as you can see, they blinking in red, this rec ready. If I press play, it's recording all of them. Of course, it's pretty obvious and straightforward, but I have to mention that. After this, we're going back to the, so we have a fader. We have these 4 buttons. And after this, we have a pan pot. And you will see that the stereo channels has 2 pan pots, and the mono channels has a 1. The idea is that if you have a stereo source, it's a sum of 2 mono signals, left and right. So you can change the positioning of the signal of left and the right channel. That means you are flexible like this if you have 2 pots. That means you can swap what is left, what is right. You see, if you put it opposite, it's gonna be natural left and right if it's normal 100% left and 100% right. And of course, you can change. You can put it the left channel slightly to the center and the right channel 100% right, and logically where it's gonna sound that thing. Speculate. Exactly, tell me if the left is on center and the right is fully right, how it's gonna sound. Not really. It's gonna sound in the middle of that angle. It's gonna sound here. You see? And I'm going back. And now we're gonna make some experimentation. That means that the left channel goes 100% left and the right 100% right. That means that you have the full 180 degrees of the stereo send it to the speakers.
That kind of depends how it was recorded.
Of course it is. The perfect left-right signal with equal levels. And now good point, and now we go there. Now, as I made it before, you see, that means that the first one, we will try to put it in the center, the left channel. So on the right one, there's going to be almost anything except half of the signal of the left channel. And on the right channel, it's going to be 100% there. So the whole loudness is going to be like this. Sorry, like this. That means that the phantom center is if you're recording something and it's one subject, like a solo violin, and you record it with stereo microphones, and if you put it 100% left, right, the pan, you're gonna listen the solo violin in the middle, because the idea is like our ears. All the differences where it's positioned in one front 180 degrees, these are the two microphones. If it's positioned there, that means that this year receiving slightly less and slightly delayed information. And the brain calculates what that means. And if it's here, the source of the noise or the sound or the music, this ear is going to listen very little from that, but a lot of reflections if it's in closed environment. And that means that this ear is going to tell to the brain, it's here. Definitely it's here, because I'm not hearing a lot of reflection, but almost only direct sound. I can tell you what's the distance, because how loud is it and how proximate is the sound is going to tell to the brain through that ear that it's far, close, but on that side. And this ear is going to tell you the same information. I heard a lot of reflections. That means that it's close, because that means that it goes to the near wall and coming back to that here, so that means that it's close. So even if you don't have that microphone that here, this here can tell you if it's on that side and how far is it, because it's going to listen how it reflects that sound to all the surfaces. Or if you're in free field, it's going to tell you how diffusive is that sound to that open field, and it's going to guess that it's somewhere there. You can't tell exactly how close, and you can't tell if it's slightly here or slightly here, but you can tell that it's in this hemisphere, and you can tell that it might be slightly toward the center or top, because the level of this microphone is going to get more and more if it's moving toward the center, because it's going to start to listen more and more and more. And it's the same with stereo microphones. The stereo microphones in the beginning, the idea was to mimic a human head. Of course, even until that moment, we're trying to achieve the best way to mimic the sound from the head. That's why I'm going to talk about in the Friday about that. The closest thing to the human hearing is a dummy head. You might see it in one fake black or white head. There's attached with ears made it, with nose, eyes. There's a hose for the eyes and stuff, but it's solid. And it's covered by rubber, because the rubber is closer to our skin. You see, it's not very shiny. It's not extremely, it's not reflected at all. And there's a microphone put it in where are the eardrums? Somewhere here, because also the shape of your ear shapes the incoming sound. It's an evolutionary instrument. So the shape of our ear is made by purpose. it's put additional direction to the sound from everywhere, and there's this little swirl that's sending the air that is vibrating because of the sounds to the eardrum. And to be in safe place, our microphone is very inside, almost inside the skull. That's why that shape's sending it, and it's inside to be safe. If it's outside the eardrum, you're gonna get deaf. Okay, let's say hundreds of thousands of years before our situation. During the evolution, we will be deaf if they were inside the skull, because they have to be saved from damage, from harm. And that's why the ear is shaped like this, to send it inside. So they put it two microphones. They shape almost perfect ear. All of us, we have different ears, but comparing to the size of the head and how wide is it, there's a logic in the shape of the ear. Okay, so again, back there. This ear is slightly deaf. This ear is 100% working. That means that all the time you're going to listen slightly to the leftish. It's the same thing with the mixer, and it's the same thing with the two microphones. So the mixing desk is trying to mimic and to give you tools to mimic the listening of, let's say, conductor, because usually the conductor is in the best place in the orchestra. It's a starting point is the best place in the orchestra. And now, if you put everything on 0, and if you put the pan on left and right, and if you play the recorded piano in that stereo track, and it's 100% left and right, the recorded piano, it's gonna sound, if you're a conductor and the piano is in front of you, somewhere there in approximately, it depends how far you put the microphones, but it's gonna sound exactly, and it's gonna mimic exactly the distance between the listener and the instruments, depending how far you put the microphones from the source. So if you put very close the microphones to the piano, you put this on 0 and a full left right, you're going to listen in the monitors that the piano is exactly like a 1 meter, approximately. If you make a recording with very distant microphones and you put it in 0, you're going to listen it exactly how if the conductor listens the piano in 10 meters from him, her, whatever. And so level and panning is everything for you to position in the front 180 degrees the source, the sound. That means that this is a stereo stage. This is 100% left, this is 100% right, and you have an orchestra or anything in front of it. After this, we're going to talk about the surrounds, but just a little bit, because it's not, it shouldn't be your virtue. So in the stereo, that's the front 180 degree, and it's between the thing that you're hearing and the thing that you're seeing. It's again attached the sight and the hearing when you're mixing. You understand perfectly what I'm saying. So if you close your eyes and you try to remind you and to pretend that you see the orchestra, and if, let's imagine that this is a violin 2, where I have to put this pan in that case, knowing that when I close my eyes, I know where the second violins are, where it has to be. Come on, guys. Okay, and let's talk about something else. These are percents. 100% left, 100% right is this. Tell me as a percent, this is a minus percent when it's go there, and this is plus percent. So this is minus 100, this is plus 100. where it has to be the second violin microphone.
Minus 25, minus 30.
Minus 25, minus 30 is a good idea. The second question is how wide you want to be the stereo mix that you're making. Because if you put it 30, it's gonna be like you're not conductor, but you're on the first row in the audience. Because for the conductor, first violins are almost totally on his left side, isn't it? The row. And the celli are opposites, and they are here. And if you put it 30, it's gonna be, the second violin is gonna be there, but it has to be there if you're a conductor. But very good point is that usually we listening, we made the orchestra sound like you're somewhere in front of in the audience, on the presidential or the king's places, somewhere around the third row, in the middle exactly. The first one is too proximate, and I can hear the breathing of the expressive playing of the musicians, and I don't want to. The second row is almost the same, and the third row receiving enough proximate information from the musicians. You can feel that they are alive. You can hear the breathing of the conductor and how grumpy he is in the middle of the cue. And you have two rows in front of you as the baffles. They're receiving some of the noises from the orchestra and some of the highest squeaky sounds from the proximate strings, and they make it milder. The first two rows working like absorbers, because the human body is one of the best absorb material with the clothes and stuff. Plus, it's very random positioned. Human, no human, human, no human, human. And that makes very good. Plus, it's a checkmate usually. Two on the front row, and it's the middle on the second one. So it makes very good random baffle, and it's milder. Usually, it's not exactly in the middle of the first row, the best place to listen. It's on the third, the fourth, the fifth, and after this is getting a little bit Vienna style. You listen something in the hall and it's beautiful and people around you listening and clapping and you feeling part of the audience. But if you want to be the king, you are somewhere in the third row in the middle. And that's the best perspective to make a mix, from my point of view, of course. It depends on the scene. The scene might deserve very proximate or extremely far, because it depends what's the scene. Tell me.
So even in a big hall, you would say like third, fourth, and fifth row are the best places?
It depends how good was the design of the acoustic in that hall.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the perfect situation.
Right. But
Because we're always talking about one of the good concert halls.
yeah, but I mean like regardless of the size of the hall, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
usually. Paper. If that's the concert hall, this is the audience, this is the stage. And we have first, second. There it is. And this is the stupid guy, the conductor. First violins, group. Second violins, group. Violas, cello, basses, brass, woodwinds, group, and the French horns, for example. And here somewhere in the spring are the percussionists. The other thing is that if you're sitting here, you're gonna be like on a tennis match. All the time, if the players changing the solos from first violin to the cello to the oboe to French horns in that moment, and stop in in the brasses, you'll be like this all the time. That's why this perspective is slightly better. You see? Because it's getting slightly more narrow. You hear slightly more. This guy is going to listen 80% dry signal. Why 80%? Because 100% is not possible. They're playing in a hole. He's going to listen the reflection from this wall, from this one, and very, very far reflections from this one. And it's going to be a little, how to say, unnatural, because if they're playing something very strong, usually the rear walls are not very reflective, because you don't want to listen all the time hard hits that coming in to the rear wall, and so it's going to be all the time. So that's why usually there's the curtains and stuff like this in the rear wall to reduce or totally to cut the reflection, but there is some, whatever you're doing. And in that position that I'm talking about, you're listening 60% dry signal and 40% the beautiful reverberation from the hole. And you have approximately 20% reduction in the noises, natural noises of the orchestra. Because during the recording, it's totally forbidden to have a bracelet, key change in the pocket or stuff like this, or change. But for the orchestra, they don't care that much. I saw them, they want to look pretty. All they are in black, but they have some chains, they have some bracelets and stuff, or the little whatever, yeah. They like it to be beautiful. And the conductor especially. So you're going to have reduction of that noises. You're going to have very, very clear idea how it sounds, the dry signal, plus very beautiful reduction in the reverb. So that's why I think this is the best place. And now let's talk about the sound. That's important also. The sound has a constant speed in the controlled environment, like a recording studio concert hall, of 3 milliseconds per meter. Is there a people who are on the Imperial or don't know how? Okay, so what's your unit? Yes, sorry.
Which one?
For length, for distance.
Inches, feet?
Inches, feet. Okay, so feet, 27 centimeters, approximately 3, and little more feet are 1 meter.
Okay.
So approximately 10 feet or 3. 1 meter is a little more than 3 feet. Let's remember that. So I'm going to talk in meters. You're going to multiply it by 3. Yeah. The speed of sound in the controlled environment, like a hall or even outside, but it depends to the temperature and the humidity. But usually, most of the time, 80% of the time, the speed of sound is 3 milliseconds per meter. And that's easy for you to understand if the depth of the hole is approximately 20 meters from the first row to the end. And from the conductor to the timpani or the triangle player are 10. That means that if you're on the last row, you have 30 meters or 90 milliseconds delay between the playing moment and when you hear it. So you have to think about it also time to time. When you're working with samples, it's very easy. The wise thing when you're working with samples is to use mostly the Decca tree when you try to make a mock-up which mimics real life. Because in the Decca, if I'm right, in all the orchestral samples, you have a positioning of the microphones. And I don't know how you use probably by default, when you open a string section in Quantum, whatever it was, or Spitfire, and when you play a strings with a name, like a lush strings or something. It's going to be mixture 60% Decca 3, which are the room microphones, and 40% of the spots by default. And that's good place, starting place, because that means that you're going to listen a little bit from the close microphone, but mostly the room microphones, how it's going to be if you're a conductor or the audience or the king on the third row. Because if you're using mostly the spot microphones and you put it and your triangle plays exactly on the grid, and if we start the recording and the triangle player plays, it's going to be slightly after that. That's why we used to make a delay compensation. We use the Decca tree and the room mics as a starting point, and we move slightly to the front, slightly to the back, excuse me, because there is a delay in the room mics. Slightly at the back, we put the far microphones, like percussions, the brass, French horns. We're gonna delay them slightly a little bit to match the natural delay in the Decca tree, because the Decca tree is gonna listen something from 10 meters with 30 milliseconds delay. But the spot mics is gonna record it exactly in time. So to match it, not to have very soft PP, you have to delay all the far microphones, the spot microphones, to be exactly in place with a lot of producers and composers ask for hand claps at the end of the recording, because you made the recording in a hole that you've never been. There is two options. If you want to align the delay, there is two options. To ask them for measuring, to tell you between Decca center, the center microphone of the room mics, and all the groups, what's the distance. And they're gonna put one laser meter and gonna tell you and gonna write. So you can calculate how much delay to put. Or, before, old school, a guy at the end of the recording to go to far left and far right, where is the timpani and stuff, and to clap. We'd open all the microphones for the orchestra. Empty hole. The orchestra lift, everything is perfect, and you clap a little bit somewhere. And you're right, this is a clap from the timpani, this is a clap from a French horn or from the tuba. Because tuba very often has short notes, but they are loud and they are low as a pitch, and they are far because the tuba is somewhere there at the back and the end of the brass at the right side. So if you make some claps, you will have the idea after this on the multi-track, this claps how far from the Decca tree, how much is the delay, and that's gonna be the how much you're gonna delay that microphone from the tuba to match the Decca tree. Again here. So now we spoke that we have a level. That means how close is that thing to me is the level. Where it's positioned in left and right environment is the pan. And after this, we have slots for inserts. In the inserts, we can put everything. Equalizers, compressors, reverbs, delays, chorus, whatever, you know. There's a lot of options. The idea is that if you make that recording without any artificial additional reverb, you can make very decent mix, but it's going to be almost documentary. It's not going to sound beautiful. It's going to sound truthful, but oh, hello.
Hello.
Didn't see you, buddy. How are you?
Good. Sorry, I was late.
No, don't worry. You need a reverb to mimic and to put on top of the natural acoustic that you record in the studio. The studios don't have a beautiful acoustic usually. They have very controlled acoustic. That means that they are calculated so everything to be audible when a lot of people playing together. On contrary, the concert halls, from the past and the present, they need to have a beautiful sound. That means that that sound by itself has to cut a little bit from the nastiness of the high register in the strings. It has to be bright at the rear side to make it more brighter, the brass, for example. And in the middle, there's a projector angles that makes the oboe player to be audible. Doesn't matter that it's 8 meters from the conductor. When it plays solo, it has to be audible solo. And it's not extreme, especially the English horn, it's not extremely loud instrument, but it has very often solos. For you, that's easy, and you don't have to care because you have the spots mics. You can put the bassoon or a bass clarinet solo, even if you want to. You can put it in front. It's like, it's gonna be like immediately the guy took the instrument and goes in front of the audience, plays the bass clarinet, and after this immediately goes to the place. That's the idea, to have the spot microphones. You can bring in front all the time the soloists, or the whole groups, if the whole group is important in some moment. And now, you need a reverb plugin, because the reverb plugins usually execute the task to make everything sounds in very beautiful environments. So if your recording studio is dry and controlled, it has some natural reverberation, but it's not beautiful, you're gonna put everything in a beautiful hall, or bizarre place, or a room. If you make the recording extremely dry, but you want to the acoustic guitar to sound in a room, you can put a room reverb, or hall reverb, or cathedral. If you recording a choir, you're gonna put it Bridge of Khazad-dûm, again, Lord of the Rings, the Maori choir, hundreds people, Maori choir, the reverb sound is cathedral sound, because it sounds even bigger, and it's in cavern. They are in Khazad-dûm. It has to sound inside the Moria. It has to be big with very high ceilings, and it has to be slightly darker and distant. These hundreds people choir, they're like orcs and Balrog in the middle, and it has to sound lush and big and closed and mysterious and distant. In that case, you can put cathedral reverb. And now we're gonna today, as an example, we have do we have some understanding here? I don't expect everything that I'm saying to stay in your brain. All of us, we know from neurology and from psychology that when we're talking about something which is brand new, or you don't have interest in that, usually when we finish approximately 2 hours after this, 30% of the information disappears. In a week, approximately half of the information is going to disappear. But it builds up. The more we're repeating the same ideas, the more it builds up. But only the experience, because it appears that the brain has a muscle memory, like the violin player. The more you made in something, the more it starts to use to it. And not only consciously, unconsciously, it starts to get used to the idea of what's going on and how to deal with it. Today we have septet. Septet has a first, second. Okay, we don't have viola. Lou Budanev, the conductor, is going to be very pleased. He hates violas. He has whole 2 hours musical without violas. With everything else, I mean.
About the reverbs, do you recommend some kind of reverbs more than others, like convolution reverb instead of algorithm?
Okay, let's talk about the reverbs now before we start. Good idea. There is four types of how the reverb is made for the mix down. First is the natural. You put a close and you put a far microphone. So you can use the far microphone as a reverb source, and you can put the close one as a spot microphone. So you have the edge and you have the presence and you have all the details of the instruments in the spot mic. You put far left and right the rear very far microphones because you might like very much the sound of the environment. You might make a recording of the boy singing in the church. And you don't want to add anything on top of that. You don't need a reverb. If you put two far microphones, which is gonna tell you how it sounds 20 meters in the same cathedral, and you put the spot microphone, you're gonna receive very aerial and heavenly sound from that little boy singing. So that's the first way, to have the nature of a reverb recorded. Second one is to use a plugin which mimics the echo chambers of one of the big halls and studios. Echo chambers usually are the basements of studios without any treatment. Concrete walls, or it's a parking lot under. But they found it in the 50s because they didn't have the digital reverbs in the 50s. And if they need a reverb, and the studio is dry, the studio in the 50s were like this, the Motown and the EMI, the big studios in the 50s, they were like this room, totally deaf. Any reflections, to be in control. And of course, it's very ugly sound, everything to be 100% dry. That there wasn't at that time mixing at all. You put one mono microphone somewhere there on the gate, you close the doors, and the mixing is you starting to move the musicians in place how you want them to sound. So the position of the instruments compared to that microphone was the mixing. Okay, the backup singers, I wanted there 3 black ladies playing, and here's gonna be the drum. And because it was one, these are the mono days, it doesn't matter if you're gonna put it far left, far right. It depends how far is from the microphone. So you can put there in the corner the drums because they are the loudest. After this, slightly in front the double bass because you want to listen to the double bass. But if you put it next to the drums, it's gonna disappear. It's a soft instrument. And after this, of course, the singer is gonna be almost in front of the microphones. There's gonna be a piano and guitar and probably Hammond somewhere there, organ or something in the other corner. And you press play. And they start to play and you go in, stop, move some of them because it's not audible. You don't have EQ, you don't have many channels, you can't mix. You can move the people. And one of the greatest recordings in the industry from late 40s and early 50s are made it like this. But it's dry, goddammit. So they put another microphone in the basement because there's a parking lot or there's an empty basement that they didn't use. Or the stairs, downstairs to the first. Open the door and recording 2 microphones together. One is reverb with reverb because it listens with delay what's going on. Or they put loudspeakers from that microphone in the room, and they put a loudspeaker down in the basement, and in front of that loudspeaker another microphone. So it listens how it sounds on that microphone, it sends it, it goes through the speaker in the basement, and another distant microphone recording the basement with the context of that sound. And these are, here is the Pope. Andy, good morning.
Good morning, Brad.
We're talking about the 40s and 50s, how they deal to make mix down with one microphone only.
Oh, excellent.
We're talking about that the studio were very deaf and controlled and without a lot of reverberation. And it was made by purpose because if you put one microphone and you start to move the musicians and the singers, depending how loud it has to be in the mix. And that was the mixing, moving and another microphone in the basement with 1 loudspeakers from that microphone. And this is the second version of a reverb that you can add in the mix. And it's called usually studio chamber. So the first one, to make a recording of the environment that you're recording the source, because it sounds very good or nasty, but that's the purpose that you want. Another one is to send a loudspeaker in the basement or in the parking lot or in the stairs and to make a recording because you don't have a place. You can do that at home. If you have a cottage, you need a basement. Or if you have an apartment, you need a basement. Or you need to open the doors from your bedroom to your kitchen or your bathroom and to put a microphone there. And to use this delayed and reverb signal as a reverb, it's up to you. First, you're recording the source with the reverb because it's cathedral and very beautiful. Second, you use a plugin or you mimic a distant sound with another microphone or with the plugin which is called Studio Chamber. Third way is the algorithmic reverb, which is the 90% of the reverb plugins and processors are algorithmic reverbs. That means that mathematically they're trying to achieve a reverberant sound only by calculating how to delay, how to EQ that incoming signal. So all the lexicons and stuff and all the reverb units and most of the plugins are calculating and mimicking by calculation how good reverb might sound. And because you have numbers for that equation, how it has to sound, they put a parameter that you can change. So you can change all the time these digits for that equation, and it calculates different sounds. These are the normal reverbs, all of them. And at the end is the one that you mentioned. These are the convolution reverb. The convolution reverbs are plugins or even hardwares, not very often, and they're very rare. But there's a convolution reverbs is when a very, very brave and without a family guy spent a year with dozens of environments bringing 12 to 20 microphones and up to 5 speakers, going to the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, put the speakers, left, center, right, speaker, and after this put the microphones, far microphones, close microphones, center microphones, wide microphones on the balcony, and at the end going out, closing the door, and start to press play to one sweep. After this. And all that microphones receiving different information because all the speakers are working. After this, he starts to put a sound only in the center speaker because you're going to receive like this a reverb for the singer. It's in the middle of the cathedral. After this, we have to put the signal only in the speaker on the left side. 1 hour. After this, the rear speakers, because that affects how the front microphone is going to receive rear information. Whole day, one location. And they made hundreds of locations like this. They're spending a year to prepare one product and 2 years to clean all that sweeps and stuff and took out an information how it sounds exactly because they took in only details of that reverbs. And in that case, you have very natural reverb, which is almost indistinguishable, almost, there's nothing perfect, almost indistinguishable by the reverb, the natural reverb of that whole. And that's how you can make a mix down with your septet in the Concertgebouw in Netherlands, in Amsterdam. Or if you want to in the Boston Symphony Orchestra Hall. Or if you want to in the Taj Mahal. Or if you want to in the tomb of the king, whatever, Ming in the 3rd dynasty in China. Or whatever. They made impulses for reverbs in everything that you might think about. From the smallest dirty toilets in Russia to the dirtiest, let's say, tomb in Egypt, and everything underwater, over water, in the space, you can find impulses for that. And now the problem. The problem is that it's heavy. Because the machine and the plugin that makes that sound receiving a lot of impulses which are audio files. And these audio files are usually recorded in 32 bits, 192 kilohertz. And there is a lot of sound files to be imported in your convolution reverb plugin. And the reverb plugin start to get information from all that hundreds and thousands of audio files to get the idea how does it sound, that environment. So that's the problem. It sounds very good, like in life. Everything which is very beautiful or it's or expensive or difficult to use or difficult to handle or it's not very stable or stuff like this. It's the same with the convolution reverb. There's an Altiverb, and he's a friend of our academy, the founder of Altiverb Reverb. This is the most stable and the heaviest, of course, reverb on the planet. But you have no less than 2,000 or 3,000 environments loaded in. And of course, they are not loaded in all the time. That means that you have a loading time. If you change the preset, it's not instant. It starts to load from your database like you have samples. If you choose, for example, the hockey stadium in Canada, you have to wait for approximately 30 seconds because it has to take all the audio files to be ready to offer you that sound. They use it a lot. Yes, Andy?
I was just going to say, just as an example of how this old school technology can still affect our lives, the legendary Capitol Studios in LA, the one that looks like a bunch of stacked vinyl records.
I'll show you now.
Seen this, right? In 2004, I'm not sure about now, but in 2004, they still had their original studio chamber, which was dug under the streets, under Vine Street in Hollywood. And it was prized by all the producers who worked in Capitol Studios. Now, the city of Los Angeles decided they wanted to build a new underground parking garage to accommodate all the traffic in Hollywood. The Capitol got wind of this and saw that the parking garage was going to abut their underground chamber. So every time somebody drove down to park their car, it was going to affect the response of that chamber. And they went to the LA City Council and asked them to declare Capitol Studios a historical monument, basically, so that the city would not be able to build this parking garage. That's how important, and this is happening after a lot of these plugins are available, right? But the producers are still saying, no, 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 we want that sound, because that sound is associated with famous records. Frank Sinatra, Phil Spector, Paul McCartney, Bruce Springsteen all used this chamber. So there was no way they were going to allow the city to touch it.
Cool. I will show you some. I bet you saw that building in some of the movies from Los Angeles. It's a very popular building. These are the Capitol Records. It's near the Hollywood Hills.
Basically Hollywood and Vine,
Yeah.
right there in the south.
And these are the chambers. You see? Ugly, dirty basement stuff. But these are the guys who made that decision that underground they need 1, 2, 3, 4 chambers. As you can see, it's still under construction. You see? And they're going to put the walls. And in these walls, you see that there's angles. You see that place? And you see the walls? All that chambers are with slightly different painting or material or no material at all, so they have different sounds. And this is the plugin. You can see the blueprints here from the chambers. This is the chamber. 2 speakers and 2 microphones towards the walls because they want the speakers to send it to the opposite wall and it starts to reverberate and they're receiving not the speaker sound but only the reflections. And this is the plugin that mimics very good that thing if you are about old school reverb sound. That was the real place and this is the plugin. You see the distressed wall they and semi-open door. They made it almost the same, and they put different kind of microphones to mimic the receivers of that sound. And after this, you have also a filter and EQ. The thing that's in the beginning, the guys in Capitol Studio didn't have. They have to use the sound as it is. They carve it, but by default, it is what it is. And now you have the pre-delay. You can, if you have a pre-delay, that means that you can change the moment when the reverb starts to affect the sound. You have the width, how in the beginning it was only mono because they put one microphone in the basement. And now you have two microphones and you have a mix, how much dry and how much wet signal you want. And you have a width, how wide you want to be that chamber. Splendid. So
Yeah, it's very humbling to remember that every time you pull out a plug-in, you're replicating the work of dozens, sometimes hundreds of acoustical designers and engineers who labored over this stuff for years to produce that. Now it's right there.
yeah. And there is a discount presently until the Christmas, or slightly after this, until New Year, let's say. There's a lot of discounts, but don't be plugging hungry because at the end of the day, you're gonna understand that you're wasting a lot of money. Use the 14-day trial period if you want to check if that's that fancy as it said in the review. Please, because at the end, you're gonna be like me. My ex-wife called me like it was 6 months ago, and said, "Okay, we have to talk about something." And God damn it again. Let's meet each other in the counter office. What the fuck? And they start to yell at me, my accountant and my wife. And the fourth thing that they mentioned that I have exactly 2,000 plugins, and I spent approximately 7,000 euro for all that plugins, and they asked me if I'm using it, all of them. And it was a good question. First of all, I started to fight back because I don't want to be a loser. But when I came back in my studio, I start to count, and it appears that from my 2,000 plugins, I'm using 70. And from that 70, most of the time, 30. But the favorite one are 12. So please don't be like me, because you don't understand. You buy a new plugin in a couple of days, or once per week or something like this. And at the end of that 10 years period, you have 2,000 plugins. So use the 14 days free periods, play with it, and make the decision if that's your sound. Because all of them in the reviews, they're pretending that this is the best and magical and is the answer for all your problems and questions. Again, the reverbs. You record it. Yes, excuse me.
I wanted to ask, when you're mixing and you have all these mics, you have the decker, you have the close, and you have the ambience. If you want to add more reverb and you have used the ambience microphones, do you put the plug-in only on the close mic?
Very good question. It's up to you. Because you remember, in the day I told you that only you know how it has to sound. Yeah. Right and wrong. There is a period in your life, and that's normal because you're evolving all the time. It's an evolution of your taste, of your knowledge, and of your skills. And you'll see that it's going to change. In my early days of mixing, I used to put a reverb only on the spot mics, because my idea was that I want the room and the deck mics to sound as natural as they are, because I'm recording the musicians in. And I put only on the spots because they're sounding very dry. If I want to put a solo or something, it doesn't have to be dry. It's not for the English horn, a dry signal. It has to be mild, and to be mild, it needs just a tiny bit of EQ and just a tiny bit of lush reverb, beautiful reverb. After this, a lot of time I didn't use at all the reverb during not the mix down, during the recording, because I want to be absolutely sure that I'm listening to all the microphones, how they're working, what's the natural balance and stuff. And nowadays, because I'm getting slightly older, more experienced and lazier, I used to put a little bit of reverb to all the channels, including the Deca3. Because I found, it's my personal point of view, it might be wrong, it might be right, but I found that the natural properties and qualities of the real room is blending better with the fake reverb if you put all the material in the fake reverb. Yeah. To blend better, because you're dealing with two reverbs in that situation. One of the recording hole and one with the dream hole on the reverb. So I think that it might be better to use all of them in modesty instead of put a lot of in the spot mics and nothing in the... It's about the balance, like everything in life. You know, the Buddhist, you have to, you're trying to walk on the sharpest part of the knife all the time, and you're falling left and right, and we're gonna learn one day.
Change when you're working in a hall like BNR, but
Oh yes, there is. There is a lot of decisions to be made. That's why usually you have two options. You as a composer to have in your mind the sound signature of the place that you're recording, because you made the recordings there and you know already how it's going to affect the final product. Or if you're going to make a recording in an environment that you've never been, and probably you're going to make the recording remotely. That means that you're going to be in Stockholm and the recording is going to be in London, for example. You have to trust to the team, because the team on the other side, on the other hand, they're dealing with that reverb and with almost the same plugins all the time, and they know how it's going to blend. In the Bulgarian national radio, we have very good mid-size hole sound by itself, because the holes might be long, mid, or short. Short hole is something like a pink knight. You know, the pink warrior is a short hole. It's not a warrior. It's not because it's dressed pink. It's strange thing. So mid-size hole and long hole are usually the hole sounds that you're gonna use. Abbey Road is a mid-size hole as a sound. Erlinghurst are mid-size as a whole, and Bulgarian National Radio being the same or slightly larger as the volume, it's mid-size hole. Big-size hole sound is something between a concert hall, but very good, with very good acoustic, or the concert halls from the past, like a Concertgebouw, like Vienna Symphony Orchestra Hall, or some, whatever. You get the idea. Mm-hmm. Concert halls, big one, lush, for thousands of listeners and big orchestras. The Hollywood sound is mixture of mid-size hole and long-size hole for the different part of the orchestra and the group. Usually the thing that we said about the Casa Doom choir of the Maors in Lord of the Rings is that they're using almost cathedral-like, which is the next thing after the long hole. But all the orchestra is in mid-size hole as a reverb.
Was that not recorded in a cathedral?
Oh, which one?
The choir? Well, that...
It's recorded in Wellington, but I don't remember when. We're going to check about it. But I know what's the reverb setting that they're using. They're using a TC Electronic 6000 for the cathedral sound. So it doesn't matter if it's recording in cathedral or no. In Wellington, I don't know if they have so that big places in New Zealand, actually. the choir is recorded in New Zealand because it's Maori choir. It's native singers and opera singers altogether because they have to be 100 singers.
Yeah, okay.
The whole orchestra is recorded in Abbey Road. No. And now, just to finalize this, you see, they made a recording in 15,000 kilometers from there, the choir, and they made a recording in Abbey Road, the orchestra, and some singing of a boy. It was somewhere in Scotland, one soloist, that singing when the butterflies. You know, the Gandalf took a butterflies when he was on Orthanc Tower at the top, imprisoned, and he asked for help for the eagles. There is a boy, and they search for that boy or whatever. I don't remember the story. I have so many stories, and sometimes I mix it up. So it's recorded in 3 different places, but that doesn't mean that it's not sounding good. So you can make that decision, and you can save money like this. You can make all your solo recording in your home, and you can make small string sections in Sofia or in Berlin remotely, and at the end you're gonna blend everything with good reverb as a plugin, and it's gonna sound good for sure. And if you reinforce it like a sandwich with some samples, it might sound gorgeous and very big at the same time, with the randomness and liveness from some real musician and the soloist, which is the thing that is gonna catch the attention of the listener. You were about to ask something, sorry.
I heard people advising to use 2 reverbs, a short one, like a room to give coherence, and a long one, like a hole to give the
Absolutely.
lush. Would you do that?
I don't remember if you were here. It was about a month ago when we have a alumni masterclass about blending reverbs.
Yes.
You've been here. So the thing that a lot of people using, because room sounds, when you call it a room reverbs, it sounds room. That means that it's gonna sound like in that room most of the time. That's why I'm using ambience, because the ambience is slightly more neutral, small environment reverb. And I'm using it in parallel or in series. So in front, it's gonna be the long one, and at the top is gonna be the short one if I want to put everything in container. Or the opposite side. If I recorded something in a very small place, like a bedroom, with one microphone only, before the long one, I'm gonna put a short reverb, like ambience, because I don't want it to be that present in the microphone sound. It has to be slightly milder. That's gonna mimic that I have a place to put the musician or the singer slightly far from the microphone. I'm using it only to mimic that I have the ability to move the microphone from the source. Because moving towards the source, the microphone, is gonna make it slightly harsh, the sound, whatever, doesn't matter how good is the microphone, where it's very proximate, it's getting to sound a little unnatural. It's like when you listen the fiddle playing in Irish bar, you listen the fiddle, but you don't want to go with your ear next to the fiddle. You want to be at the opposite side of the bar, isn't it? And it sounds gorgeous with the Celtic band. So you're gonna use the ambience or the room for 2 purposes: to put it after the long one, to put everything in container, because sometimes the big reverb makes everything very lush and very engaging. I mean, you have to. It starts to take hold the attention to that performance. And if it's part of the movie, it doesn't have to be the only thing that the audience is going to listen. They have to listen the dialogue. Sometimes the effects are very important. Sometimes the environment, which might be fake or real, it's very important. And the music is just a part of the puzzle. So it needs a container. That's why you're going to put at the end to make it slightly more contain the whole reverberant sound. Or in front, if you want to move the distance of microphone closer or more distance from the source that you made the recording. So I'm blending all the time ambience with whole with ambience. Sometimes, I used to spoke about that, you can use one ambience and two different long reverbs in series, like it's in the one that I mentioned with Howard Shaw. They use a cathedral for choir, whole for the orchestra, and cathedral for the boy that's singing. You see, so it's very three-dimensional, the stuff, because that means that you're feeling that the orchestra is in front, and it's a whole, and it sounds the way the people used to listen to orchestra. And after this, there's a very aerial and cavernous sound of the choir, and that puts the choir back. So you have already two depths, two dimensions of depth. And again, in front is the boy, but the reverb is at the back. That means that the reverb is in front, but it shows that the whole environment that you're recording, the boy, the orchestra, and the choir is very big. It's a question of experimentation, of course. It's about the unique signature of sound that you have to achieve. Because if we're trying to make, in the beginning, we need to find a way to make the good examples in the industry. After this, when you start to make it with easily the good examples, you have to start to try to find your unique signature. I'm sure that all of you are going to be very good composers. The question is be unique composers. And luck, because we don't know how of the best composers disappears because they didn't have the luck or the connections or the... Now, tell me,
When you say in series, do you mean everything in one bus, two reverbs in one bus?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Two cents?
Of course, to be in better control, it's going to be three different auxes with three reverbs, but they're going to go at the end of the input signal, in the input signal. This is in parallel. And in series is to put it in the same bus. So they're gonna, the third one's gonna be affected by the second and the first. The second's gonna be affected by the first is gonna be affected by the dry signal. So you can stack it if you want to make something interesting.
What about algorithmic reverbs? Would you recommend them or?
Oh yeah, definitely. All the big reverbs like TC that I mentioned, for all the Lord of the Rings, it's mixed, the score and the movie is mixed by TC Electronic 6000, which is algorithmic reverb. And the lexicons that we used to use in the national radio or in Abbey Road or in Dolly even, there is one white controller in front of me usually, you're gonna mention it. It's the remote control, a very big unit, which is hardware lexicon reverb, and it's algorithmic because it's a machine. There is only 2 or 3 convolution hardware reverbs, not as a plugin. But all of them, actually, there is a computer inside the box, which is in the rack, and it's doing the same thing like the plugin, but in the plugin, your computer is doing the same job.
What is it that made that, you're talking about the 480L, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that made that so special that it's still around, sitting on every desk in every studio all over the world?
Industry standard, it has to be in the picture. Is it good? It is, definitely. Yeah. Is there a better thing in the 80s? Absolutely. There's a Quantex, there's a AMS reverbs, there's a Eventide reverbs. A lot of company made the reverbs in 80s, hardware reverbs, the digital hardware reverbs, because there was the analog hardware reverbs before that. Are they the best? It's like the NIF and solid state weapon of choice of the good sound engineers. Right. It's like with the drugs and with the meals. Is it the margarita the best pizza? No. Is it the most popular? Yes. Why? Is it the best? No. But it is, isn't it? It's most popular. It's the same thing. After this, because it was very, 100 times better than me, it was very, very heavy industry, the sound recording in the 80s, and the budgets were very, very high. And in that moment, if you want to have a studio, that's working for that industry and that's on profit, you need to have certain pieces of gear which are industry standard. Because someone from the States might be on sole vacation in Westshire in England, and if you go to the local studio, you need to be able to work with the same things. It's like the Pro Tools and the plugins. There's the industry standards. That's why the solid state logic company with the big desk and the Neve before that with the big desk become very popular because they have good sound, they're robust, they're not breaking a lot, and they have some signature sound. And the people around the world get used to that. And there's a big mistake because usually producer, the production company used to go to the producer because they know his sound. And he demands that this sound is related to a gear. It's not related to a gear. It's related to an artist and his ears. He can make that sound with a lot of different gears, but he wants to be not stressed. And obviously he has an idea how to work with some of that gear because he has it in his studio or the studio he's using, the producer and sound engineer. So they're demanding that this is the best one and it's related to their sound signature because they used to use it. And they have already with that desk and that reverb, they have a presets. They own custom presets. They don't want to spend days to mimic the same preset with another box. And because very important companies make deals with very important stars, with very important producers, some of that pieces of hardware are getting more and more and more popular and selling more and more and more. And now they are iconic, and we made plugins that they're trying to mimic exactly the same sound. Is that bad? Not at all. If you want to make the same sound like Peter Gabriel, you're going to use Peter Gabriel's hardwares or the plugins that emulates that hardwares. But if you want to make your personal sound signature unique, I'm going to repeat that all the time. Everything is about unique, that's words. That means that you can work with whatever you want. It's also, I ask you, what digital audio workstation you use for composing. It's not important at all. It's the only thing which is important is to be easy for you and to be almost transparent. That's the AW for you. So it's not going to slow you down because in one particular moment you have an idea and you might lose it in a second. So you have to be able to work very quickly and the digital audio workstation to disappear for you. It's the same with the gears, with the machines. They has to be absolutely transparent for you because you know them very well how to work. And the second thing which is very important is how easy it's going to be to exchange your project with everybody else. In that matter, Logic, Cubase for composing, it's a good standards. But everything which exports audio and MIDI is going to work, of course. Pro Tools is very poor in the stage of composing, but for recording and mixing and editing, it's very powerful and it's industry standard. We spoke about it in Monday. Is it good? No, it's not the best. It's not the worst. It's okay. It's very expensive because they can sell a lot of Pro Tools in high price because they're feeling important. Okay, reverbs. We talk about the reverbs. But just like something else, do you remember that I told you that the mixing sometimes is, I might repeat sometimes. I'm repeating myself, but the mixing is just like arranging and making the music is like cooking. So now I'm going to give you the same example as like with the cooking. When you start to cook a meal, for example stew, you have potatoes, you have some meat, you have carrots, you have tomatoes, you have a lot of things. You have water, and you have some spices, black pepper and salt. And all of them has to be pre-prepared. That has to happen with, let me close that window. Before you start to mix, you need to be sure that everything is cleaned. Just like you peel the carrots and the potatoes, isn't it? You didn't throw it directly in the pots. You have to clean and to cut the meat a little bit. And after this, you have to mess with it and you have to taste it a couple of times. And after this, you're gonna cut some garlic. And if it's still tasteless, you're gonna put some special ingredients, which is something dry species or whatever, you know, natural glutamate, so like they used to do in the Chinese restaurant, to make it tastier. It's the same because the microphone by themselves, because they're expensive pieces of gear, they sounding good, but they had to sound neutral. You're recording a video and you want to be very bright, and if the microphone is bright, that means that that's why usually the microphones are more equal from in the top and in the bottom. There is a special microphones with sound signatures, but most of the microphones has the quality studio microphones has very low noise because they're electronic devices and they have their own noise. So the quality means that they sounding good, controlled with low noise, and they can handle a lot of pressure from the sound. They're gonna start, not gonna start to overdrive, to sound distorted if it's very loud. And on the opposite side, they're very sensitive with a low noise. That means that you can make a recording with something soft and delicate. And if you turn it up, it's not gonna build up a noise from the microphone, but only the sound of that very delicate or distant thing. Because by a chance, in one moment, the solo microphones start to take some information from some other instruments. And you wanted the violin solo microphone also to take a good information from the second violins, because the leakage between all the microphones makes the thing three-dimensional. So that's why the microphones has to be clean, sensitive, to handle high pressure, and to be linear as much as possible, because that means that it gives you the option for you to, after this, to cut to frequency or to boost high frequency to make it crisper. And if you stack a lot of neutral microphones, at the end you have a little neutral sound. And we want it more hi-fi sound, to be more high fidelity, to be more cleaner, more crisper. And in that moment, we have to peel the potatoes and the carrots and to cut the meat. We have to pre-prepare each of the channels. And when we made some of it, we're gonna listen for the first time how it sounds without reverb, and pans and some EQs that you cut the frequency that you don't need. The other thing that you might put an EQ, doesn't matter if you're gonna use it or not, to the beginning, is that you're gonna be able, because all the sound elements and sound sources, different instruments, has their unique qualities in the orchestra. For example, the high violins don't have low end, isn't it? They're crisp and high. The second violins are the same, but they're playing lower pitches, the lower notes usually. The violas are slightly bigger and more mid-frequency heavy. And the celli are even bigger and more mellow and heavier. And the basses don't have a lot or any high frequency, but they have low, mid, and low frequency. And that's how the evolution of the orchestra instruments helping us with the mix. By default, the orchestra instruments are balanced sonically.
because that's the evolution of the instruments in the orchestra. And we are very fortunate that we live in 21st century, and we are in 300 years from the beginning of that evolution of the orchestra instrument. So half of the mix is made during the orchestration, 30% is made by the nature of the instruments, and there's a 20% which are the equation that we spoke about, 80-20, which is the most consuming part sometimes, to master it until 100% ready. What is 100% ready? It's the perfection that it's in your head. What is perfection? Nobody knows. And actually, that's why the reference listening with something very good, as an example, is important. Because you might start to mix, and you think that it's almost perfect. And you feel that it sounds exactly in your head. But after this, you play something which is comparable as music, and it appears that no, I'm far from this. That's why the reference during the mixdown, referencing, A/B testing between the thing that you're doing and taking a break time to time are important. The chasing of perfection sometimes is bad thing. Most of the time is good, but because the perfection, nobody knows what is perfect. And the other thing is it's a point of view. What is perfect for you might be not perfect for her. Or what is perfect for her might be overdone for you. Because all the people has different taste. So my point is not to waste your time. Don't waste your time in that pursuit of perfection. Compare your material to something which is already prized and very good, and try to build up and to step on top of it a little more. Not a lot, because a lot of people might disagree that your thing that you step 2 steps over the quality of the perfect thing, let's call it Hollywood perfect thing, for a lot of people it's going to be out of their listening comfort zone. And they said, okay, it's too present, or okay, it's too prominent, okay, it's too harsh, okay, it's not like Star Wars. So you have to think about a lot of things to be unique, to work for the picture and not for your ego, because just like composing for movie and games and whatever, we have to distance from our egos. We have to be patient, but stay proud all the time. And try to be very valuable and working brick of the whole building, which is the movie sound. It might be genius, the music that you wrote, but it might be so genius that nobody's looking at the scene anymore. They're listening to the music. Is that good? No, it's not good. It's good if you release your symphony after the movie with that scene or that cue, but it's not going to work for a movie. Or if you have an idea for something which is very, very big in context of that movie, put it on the end credits, at least. Okay, let's start with that. Do you want 10-minute break?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Will you
You feeding my kids, I will feed your future kids. Now, let's start with the thing I'm gonna do is to save a little time to listen it. Oh no, it might be a good idea to start directly with everything on 0 as a level and everything in the middle. Ready? It's gonna be fun. Now, I'm gonna remove the click track. We don't need it in the moment. I remove the mockup. Oh no, the mockup, we might listen to it. Sorry. Zoom in out. Okay, cool. Now, first we're gonna listen a little bit to the mockup. Obviously, Oscar used a lot of reverbs to make it very in the hole. It's almost like a concert sound. Because you see the soft solo in the woodwind, it's distant. Also the flute, the piccolo. The solo cello, if that's solo cello, it's distant. So he has an idea for dreamy sound as a memory scene, let's say like this. Now we're gonna mute the mockup. I'm gonna mute it, hide this, and we're gonna mute the mockup not to interfere with us. It might be a good idea to listen for just once. The board mix maybe. Let's listen to the board mix, what we have here. This is the sound that we used to listen during the recording. Frulato. Obviously, during the recording, you will be quite close to the intention, but now we're gonna do it again inside the box, without mixers, without lexicon reverbs, only with the things that we have. And now let's listen the raw material. I'm gonna mute for the beginning all the prelays, because we have to mix very well the live musicians. The prelays are whatever they are. We record it in the closet. In the bathroom, open wardrobe, put the microphone in the wardrobe and playing to the microphone between the dresses. That's a good idea how to. Now let's listen to the strings. Everything is played here. And you can hear how long is the reverb, the natural reverb of the chamber in Dolly. It's a room actually. And now, and everything sounds now mono. I mean, you listen all together, everything in the center, because the left speaker and the right speaker playing totally the same thing. You can't position what is left and what is right. Where is it? The flute is there because your position. Stand in front. Okay, it might be a good idea to go during the auditioning. Go behind. All of you, please, because all the guys which are in front's gonna not. Yeah, but sit down, take a chair, sit, but stay around there. Is it mono? Almost.
Well, all the spots mic are mono, so I think that the deca. I didn't see if you panned the deca.
No, the deck is also mono.
Everything is just.
Yes, it's somewhere in the center, in one big spaghetti in the center, one big macaron. And now, I'm gonna play for you just the deca tree, and I'm gonna put the deca tree far left, far right, and center in the center, and I'm gonna reduce the center microphone by 10 dB, and we're gonna listen again everything. And now we listen only the deca. Excuse me. We can't listen only the deca because the flute and the clarinet were in the booths. And then we're gonna listen to the deca only the strings, because you remember in Dolly, we put the different musicians in different booths to be able to tune it after this if you want to, or to stop it at all. So there is a good and bad things to make a recording in studio like Dolly. The good thing is that you have a clean stems from the beginning. You have the strings, you have the brass, you have the woodwinds on different mixes. And you can stop something and there's not going to be leakage in the other thing. So you can make different versions. You can make for one scene only the strings from that cue. In the other scene, strings with flute and clarinet. And in one of the scenes, lonely flute only. That's the pluses. But you have to put more efforts to mix it to sound good, because they are not together. And there's no good sounding reverb in whole that's going to help them. For intonation, for how they're going to interact with the other people. And now, let's listen again the flutes and the strings. The flute's gonna sound the same because it's not affected by the deca tree, and we go directly to the. I'm gonna mute the flute now. And now I'm going to play for you only the left deca to be able for you to understand what you... You can hear the other instruments, but most first violins. And the opposite. Okay, and now all them together again. Okay, now we have old school Beatles days stereo recording of strings. And now I'm gonna put a pan to all the tracks. First, I'm gonna reduce a little bit the spot microphones because I want to keep more of that Decca sound, which is slightly more distant, not that proximate. I'm going to reduce it by 8 dB from the beginning. And it's again by taste, of course. I'm going to mute for the moment the flute and clarinet. We're going to add them on the top because they are the meat. First, we have to boil a little bit the carrots and the potatoes because they need a little longer. And I'm going to pan. I'm going to put the first violin 100%. I'm going to put this one approximately 50. It could be a little random. If it's a little random, it's going to give another randomness in the stereo picture, which is not bad because they are a group of instruments. And we have, this is a string section with 3 violins and 2 celli. Okay, let's try again, without reverb, without anything. It's getting slightly harder as a sound because you have the spot mics. And that's why I reduced them from the beginning, the spot mic to be lower as a volume as the Decca 3, because in the Decca 3 you have more milder and togetherness in the picture. And the spot mics is gonna give you more brittle and more bright and more proximate sounds. And you can hear that also there is a build-up in the low frequency, because all the directional microphones has the ability to make something boomier, more low frequency heavy, if you're getting closer to the distance. Now, I'm gonna do the following. I'm gonna make some group, and there's gonna be 2 groups for me to be easier. The first group is gonna be called spots, and the other group is going to be called Decca. Don't ask me for the shortcuts, are not important. We're talking about the idea of the mixing. I'm going to let you know after this all the shortcuts and stuff. And now, let's listen again. This is the Decca. This is the spots. Decca, spots. More definition in spots, more milder in the Decca. Again together. You remember the cello, the intention was the cello to be very dreamy and far in the mock-up. Now, we have to put a reverb, a hefty amount of reverb to all of it. I made some crossfades because it wasn't edited. I'm gonna remove all the noises at the end and all the noises in the pre-count. Actually, in the beginning, it was only solo woodwinds, so I'm going to cut everything until bar 11 in the main chamber, where are the strings. I'm going to make one fade in. Otherwise, it's going to start immediately. You're going to feel that I open another 8 microphones, and it has to be gradually to fool the ear that it didn't happen suddenly. And now I'm going to make one new stereo aux. In that aux, as we spoke, it's an empty tube. I'm gonna put a pre-safe EQ, and I'm gonna put a reverb. The build one that we hate, but we're gonna use because we are very kind people. I'm gonna put it in the medium hole, and let's listen. Now, it don't have inputs. It needs an input. First, it needs also an output to be the same like the other tracks. And it needs an input which is going to be bus 1 and 2, which are the empty pipes that we have on the side. And we have to send all of it to this reverb. So we're going to send from the sends. As you can see on each of the tracks, we put the send to that reverb. Let's listen again. Now, the intention was to be very dreamy. That means very wet at the same time. I'm gonna, from the sends, you see, because I'm pressing all the sends from the different channels and put more reverb. This is where I turn the crank to go more water from this channel to attack the reverb. So I left a little less to the decatry and a lot to the 0 from all the spot microphones, and definitely from the for the flutes and for the... Now let's listen again the strings until the moment that we are happy with how much reverb that we used. This is not the reverb that we like, and we need longer. Forget about the modulation. You're going to use better. This is only to make it wet. Now, because we are lazy and we want to be effective, I'm going to make a master bus. Excuse me. The master bus, I don't know if you know, but usually the mixers has different faders for each of the channel and the microphone. And at the end, you have one master fader for all the picture together to be more or less. The good thing about the Pro Tools and all the other digital audio workstation that you can put again sends and inserts on the master bus. Okay, we made one master fader. So that master fader affects to the level of all the channels. And first of all, I'm gonna put an EQ because for me it's sounding very sharp and nasty. And I'm gonna reduce, keep in mind that around 2 kilohertz, here around 2 kilohertz, this is the green dot shows the green part of the EQ. This band is called high mid frequency. We have high frequency, we have a high mid frequency, we have mid frequency, low mid frequency, and low frequency. So this is the highest, this is after this is exactly in the middle, this is lower portion of the frequency, and this is the lowest. So the thing that I've done is until 5 kilohertz I reduce from the beginning, because in the big hole, the high frequency of all the sounds on the earth and in the universe, the highest frequency has short length of the wave. And it's weaker. Someone's, there's a vibration. Cool, it's not a big deal. So, as I said, the highest frequency has the weakest energy. So in the concert hall, the phi you get from the strings, the milder it gets, and that's good. And it's the same with the violin and the flute. If you listen to piccolo very close, you will listen and a lot of high pitch frequency, but it is far. That's why it's put it somewhere there in the middle, in the back, the piccolo. It's getting milder and not that piercing to the ear when it makes stuff. The distance work for us. And that's how I'm gonna mimic that we are not in small environment, which is very bright and proximate. I'm gonna reduce the weakest frequencies, the high frequencies, and gonna mimic that they are far from us. Let's check how it's gonna sound, if it's gonna be better now. Also, on the reverb, this is the EQ for the reverb. Before the reverb, I put another EQ. On the EQ, also I'm gonna cut a little bit the high frequency. And the boominess in the low frequency also, about 240 in that moment. And let's listen again, the same thing, that's unpleasant string section. Excuse me. Again. It's getting better, but we're still not there. Now, I can hear that again there is a buildup of boxiness because it's a huge box, the Dolby Media Studio. The smaller the ambience that you're recording, the more boxier sound. Boxier sound means that everything is close to each other and all the microphones couldn't be very far from the source. And that buildup of mid-low frequency, it makes one sound that I'm gonna play the opposite EQ. I'm gonna boost it up just to recognize what's the boxiness, what I mean. And after this, I'm gonna reduce it to make it more pleasant. Listen. Now, I'm gonna play it and I'm gonna bypass, look at me here, I'm gonna bypass during the playback the EQ. Is it getting louder? It's getting louder and more distant. Now I can hear also that in the reverb I need to reduce a little more the same portion of the spectrum, which are the low mid frequency that I had a lot. Now I'm gonna bypass the EQ only on the reverb. You see all the reverbs contributes to make it softer and more distant. Again, this is the EQ of the reverb only. Bypass. The airplane is coming in. Now I'm gonna do the trick with the second reverb on the master bus. The second reverb is gonna be mild between 150 and 200 milliseconds ambience. But because it's on the master bus, I cannot leave it 100% wet because it's gonna put everything in that ambience. Why I'm doing this? I'm using long reverb to put a color that everything is in a concert hall, and after this I'm putting on the master bus additional small reverb to put it in frame everything, because otherwise it's too random everything. And now because the ambient reverb also puts the perspective and the whole orchestra further deep in the sound fields, you again feeling that it's getting more far from the listener, and on top of that, it's getting more slightly 3D perspective, because you're not feeling already only the dry signals, but this ambience reverb affects like a EQ, because it softens the highest frequency and the transients of the high frequency. It's getting a job like a compressor, because the reverb that everything coming in, it's getting softer because it's reverb. And it's reverb on top of that because it puts everything deeper. Again, let's listen. Without it. Remember that we have a reverb already, but it wasn't enough. And now without. Okay, is it louder? It is. I think that we're going to the right direction. And now we're gonna include the flute. Let's listen this pool baby. What's doing lonely in the booth. I'm gonna clean all the empty parts when they're not playing, because usually because they're feeling isolated, they start to make noises. It's a human. I'm gonna cut all the empty parts of the performance. I'm gonna put fade-ins and fade-outs because nothing has to be sudden. Here I'm gonna mute the whole ending in the clarinet because the clarinet's not playing, and a little fade-out. And as far as I can see, also the strings are not playing. We have only flute in the beginning and at the end. I'm gonna mute the final parts. You see how much we clean? I can go even further when erasing all that parts. Now we have cleaned it already, the whole picture. And let's start to listen. Do you remember how it was when it was without all the reverbs? I'm gonna remind you. And we did a lot of job only with 2 EQs, one before the reverb, one reverb, another on the master bus EQ, and another very short ambience on the master bus. And already we are almost there where we want to be. The question is that still I can hear a lot of present flutes, because the flute has only one spot microphone in the closet. The thing that I can do is 2 things. First, I can lower it, excuse me, this is the pan. Because we have 2 woodwinds, I'm gonna put them apart. One is gonna be left 24 and another one is gonna be for balance. The clarinet's gonna be right 24. So we're gonna mimic they sitting in the center, but next to each other. And now I'm gonna lower the whole channel of the flute a little bit by taste. It's the cooking. We put a lot of carrots. No, it's getting too sweet. We remove a little from the carrots. We magically can extract only some carrots from the stew. I still don't like it very much. And I'm gonna put an EQ only to the channel of the flute. I'm gonna make it milder here. I'm gonna remove a little bit for the mid-range, and I'm gonna cut totally the low, because in that flute there's not a lot, it's not a bass guitar or a bass drum. Now you hear one breathing. If you're very picky and don't want the breathing, you can cut the breathing. You can make some fade in, fade outs. And to isolate that breath, it's distant, but for me, it might be good to have some present, whatever is distant, and I'm gonna play a little bit with this 2 kilohertz, which is the opposite frequency of the strings that we cut it a little bit. You remember? Come on, baby. You see, this is the presence in the flute. And because we cut this frequency because of the strings, it's suffering for I'm gonna cut this part, which is with flatter tongue, with the frullato, and gonna bring it a little more, to be more, because I want to listen that effect. Oh, they start horrible. I'm gonna make them with the fading, smoother entrance. Again, I don't like the beginning. Now, the good thing is that I can see that there's going to be an attack in the clarinet. And probably it's going to cover it. But before that, I need to do something else. I need to make an opposite EQ to the high strings and to the low strings. Because now, for me, it's not absolutely obvious what the cello and what the cello plays. And I think that there's a frequency missing to the cello. And I'm going to put on the channels of the microphones, of the violins and the cello, and I'm going to cut the low frequency in the violins, in the violins, excuse me. Which is something like a high-pass filter, the filter that passes the high frequency but cuts the low one. And gonna do opposites on the cello. I'm gonna extend a little bit the body of the cello because the cello needs more body. They are bigger instruments. But we don't need that much of the high frequency. So now the cello has the cello, excuse me, has a little boost in the low mid, and the violins has cut in the low frequency. Now, let's listen the poor clarinet, what he's doing. I boost a little bit the clarinet because it was his solo in the gap of the flute. Again, I think that the clarinet needs a little attention sound-wise, so I'm gonna boost again somewhere there because it's the same family of instruments.
Ansel has a question in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm going to read it out loud. Question, what is our goal of mastering? Natural perfection, question mark. Why cutting frequencies from the master channel instead of individual tracks? And then he writes, why cutting mid-frequency on the flute?
Ah, okay, it's a good question. It's about the shape of the carrot or the potato that you take. If the potato is too thumpy from the left side, or there is some spot that you don't like, you're gonna peel it. It's about this clarinet in that environment. If you recording in the hall, another clarinet instrument, another player in another room with slightly distant microphone, you might not need it. We have a knife and a vegetable, and we're gonna carve it until the moment it fits to the stew. That's the idea of carving. I put on the master bus an EQ because that EQ is gonna affect to all of them. And after this, I have to do probably some opposite things to the instrument that's suffering from this mastering EQ. But the mastering EQ is the starting point to make your creative decisions, to make it softer from the beginning. So we put it everything, that's why we start with the big reverb, and with the ambience at the end, because we have to make it 80% ready. And after this, with the track EQs, we're trying to figure it out this another last 20% between 80 and 100%. Because I can hear that even without all that, I'm gonna bypass all that track EQs, and I'm gonna play it again. I almost figure it out with one EQ only. And why not to do that if I can? It's about effectiveness and how much time you want to spend. After this, if you have a lot of recordings of septets in that studio, let's imagine that you made the whole movie with the septet. Sometimes you're using a solo violin only, sometimes solo flute, sometimes cello, flute, and solo violin, sometimes the whole septet, sometimes only the strings, so you can build all the movie around that septet. In that case, when you achieve the good sound with the biggest score, which is all the instruments playing in one moment, this is your template for the sound of the movie from beginning till the end, because you can print that mix to all the scenes. Doesn't matter if it's solo violin or if it's solo. Now we're gonna have a solo. I remember that there was a cello solo in the second part. We're gonna listen to it and we're gonna play with it until it is solo cello. That means that probably we're gonna need to reduce everybody else a little bit. Or they played espressivo and everybody made a sound pocket during the recording, which is the perfect way to work. If during the recording you wrote to the solo cello that it has to be mezzo forte, and the dynamic sign marking for everybody else is the same like from the beginning. It's mezzo piano. You need to make slightly bigger pocket during the recording because it's going to affect all the microphones. So during the solo, you're going to took a marking not from mezzo piano but to piano to everybody else to be able to interact with the solo instrument, to make a space for the solo instrument, and another marking upper for the solo instrument to play more espressivo and more louder. You can do the same thing during the mixdown, but you're gonna need more efforts because it's not gonna be that natural if they didn't made it during the recording. And you have to pretend that they play it softer, but because usually how loud the instruments are played reflects not only by the loudness, the level, but the timbre of the instrument. So it's important to think about how it's going to be performed. I don't know if I answered the question. If he's, and now again, I'm going to open all the EQs on the tracks because these are the little carvings. We made the cake, and the small EQs are the ornaments on the cake, on the sides. We made some stars and little dots to be more beautiful and more impressive. Okay, now let's listen to the second part. Obviously, they did it. They made it softer everybody else and a lot more present cello, but it's a bit too much. So I'm going to reduce it by 4 dB, the cello. and I'm still reducing it until the moment that I'm feeling that it's.
Sorry, Vlad, you're just lowering the volume of the instrument.
The instrument until it fits between everybody else. Because it's a spot mic that I'm touching, it was very present that the cello took it and goes in the audience and play to them, and I don't want that to happen. That's why I reduced it, because they did it intentionally to play a lot louder, but it's too loud already. And do you remember in the mock-up, it was again distant solo cello. Cool. Now, for me, it's a little difficult because I'm on the opposite side of the monitors and I'm mixing with the incoming back signal. But I think that there is one secret frequency that bothers me a lot. And this is exactly the radio sound which is in the middle of the EQ, which is the 1 kilohertz region. And let's listen what it's doing. You see, and now I showed it to you to remove it and for you to understand what I'm removing.
You said radio sound.
Radio sound, it sounds like old plastic radio on the wall in the 70s and 80s.
Can you play it again? I didn't hear.
Yes, again. There it is. Oh, noisy sounds a little bit. This is a paper speaker, cheap paper speaker in the plastic small radio. Now I reduce it and it's getting cleaner. You don't understand it's getting cleaner, but if you listen, you're gonna listen. Please listen on headphones the thing that we're doing now. Go at home and listen. Now you can bypass here. You have buttons in, and you can bypass that frequency. You see? So everything that I've done, in, out, you bypass only the frequency and the whole EQ if you want to.
Vlad, I'm assuming, I can't see from here, but I'm assuming you're cutting that frequency in the master.
Yes, on the master. Because everybody has that. Probably it's because in the studio it sounds that way. Probably it's the build-up of the resonance of all the microphones. Sometimes the microphone, because I used to use small microphones for the smaller orchestras, because the smaller microphones are more directional.
Yeah.
So if there are less musicians, they're going to be more distinguishable between each of the string players, which one is the first, which one is the second. Because the smaller microphone is small like a spyglass. And the bigger microphone is like this, you see bigger picture. The smaller one, I can see her only, without everybody else. The bigger one, this is the same with directivity. A big microphone might have a change the pattern of directivity to make it more directional, unless that's the good thing about the big microphones, that sometimes you can make it more directional or more open. The small one don't have that ability. Now I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna hear, especially here where it's heavier frequency, this part of and I'm gonna bypass this 1 kilohertz region. you're gonna listen it on the headphones. It's very important, mild but important information of the sound, and it makes everything clearer. And now let's listen it from beginning to the end to make another decision. Is there a question before that? Or let's listen it once. You know already by heart this tune. The next thing that I'm gonna do is the thing that all the time I'm looking at of the overall level. It could be slightly louder, isn't it? First of all, I'm gonna put one very simple compressor just to check if it's gonna bring all together easier because they are in different rooms. Okay, and now I'm going to put the same thing to the clarinet and to the flute. And let's. And now at the end, the last thing that I'm going to do is to put one limiter and going to crank it a little. This is the ceiling. This is how loud it's going to be in the loudest part. And I'm going to put it -1 dB. But I'm going to pump almost 3.5 dB on it. Now we're gonna add the prelays. The prelays need to be sent to the same reverb to blend them easier with the other part of Gork, because the prelay is harp. So we have to pretend that we have a harp in the string section. We have some pads. We'll see if they need at all reverb, and there is a cymbal. Obviously the cymbal is in the orchestra, so maybe we will need it. Let's listen to it. Okay, obviously this path is valid. Let's start again.
What did you just do?
I'm reducing the path until it blends with the orchestra because it covers it already. It has a lot of low frequency, low mid frequency. There's like a wind, and we have to blend it. So I'm reducing it until the moment the orchestra appears on top of it. It has to be its path. It has to be everywhere, but not on the top of the orchestra. And now the cymbals will come and harp directly after the cymbal. That's the problem. If you send for mix down something, don't put a reverb on it, because obviously I bypassed our send to our reverb and listen on solo only the harp, and it's with reverb, and that reverb might be totally different than the one that we have and that we want. So in the prelay, it's better everything to, okay, for the recording it's not a big deal, because we're gonna listen only for reference this prelay, but for the mix down, you have to have the dry, yes?
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask
Yeah.
about that.
Now we're gonna deal with that. It's not a big deal. This, it's very soft because it's with reverb. I'm gonna put just a little bit of EQ to make it more harp-like. So I'm gonna reduce again the lowest, the mid-lows. Can you hear it?
Isn't it missing some of the high frequencies?
It is. That's why I'm boosting here. Because it's with reverb, we cannot make it extremely bright, but we can do something. Again, let's listen the harp with and without the EQ. Without. Like this, it's going to be more present in the mix because it's not by itself. I don't know what's the intention of the composer. It might be in the mix or might be out the mix. But for me, it's important to show you how it's more present and it's tickling a little bit everything else, because everything else is pad-like. So we need that harp to be e-candy, a bubble gum, a chewing bubble gum for the listeners. Something's going on there. And I'm going to position it at the moment. The original harp, it's slightly on the left side, like it's in the orchestra. Okay, I'm going to leave it like this. Let's listen to the cymbal. The cymbal was almost okay, if I remember it correctly. Okay, we're going to leave it like this. Now let's listen again this harp with everybody else. Okay, so the second part, from bar 34, because of the register, flutes is already audible. But the beginning, because the pitch is low, it's a decision what the melody does, but keep in mind that the lower register from in all the instruments, it's quieter than the high one. So we have to help to the beginning of this solo of the flute and reduce it after this when it's going to the How is it? We did some good stuff with that cue, isn't it? You're gonna look at it now. The thing, let me check something. I'm gonna close it now. Here, you will find two versions of the project. One is gonna be no mix, and the other is gonna be mixed. So you can open it to see what's the difference. Listen to you.
I've been surprised when you took off the high frequencies, because I feel that usually it's the opposite. When you have in templates like there's always an EQ on the master bus that gives a bit more of this air, and so you took off a lot, and then when you put the ambience reverb, it kind of like corrected it. Not that it added high frequencies, but kind of took off more mud and made it flatter.
You got it right. Now, the idea is that sometimes the pre-prepared curves for EQ suggesting that you have to put some frequencies. Yeah. Actually, always in the good life, when something is recorded well, it's better to cut some of the opposite frequencies than to add more frequencies. So that means that if something sounding dull, that doesn't mean that you have to bring more high frequency. Sometimes that means that you have to reduce the low mid frequency, and it's got to do the same. Well, let's try it. Try it at home. You have it already as a template. You have a master EQ and you have additional EQs. Who was that? Ansel? Yeah. Ansel asked, how about, because I cut some frequency, how about if I boost other frequency? That's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. It's a question of experimentation. If you take as a baseline the recorded thing and start to build frequency that I'm missing, it's the opposite thing the thing that I'm doing. You see, it's if you took a very good piece of meat, but it has a lot of fat and good protein. I prefer not to take more meat, only muscles, and put it on top of the meal, but to carve only the fat and to remove it from the equation. So for me, it's always better to remove something unnecessary than to build another thing which is not in the recording correctively to build more high frequency. Because at the end of the day, it might be too bright, become too brittle, too bright, too pleasant, and we try to make it mild. The other thing is that always when I'm mixing a music that I know that it's for the movie, I'm trying to make it milder, because all the carvings, and you made it with carvings, with cutting frequencies, makes a pocket for the other parts of the sounds of the movie, isn't it? Yeah. Because if you build more and more high frequency, in the movie, during the final mix downstage, the re-recording mixer always reducing on the dialogue the high frequency. In the movie, all the dialogue is with cut frequency from 7 kilohertz, middle sounding in the dialogue. And if you bring a lot in the strings, for example, or in other instruments of the highest frequency, I'm talking about from 7 upwards, it's gonna be a dialogue trying to compete with very present high frequency music. And that's not the purpose of the music. The music is the path in the orchestration of the whole movie. Sometimes it's the leader, because there is some scenes where sometimes there's no any foley or dialogue or anything, and the music is the anchor, the actor, the main character. But most of the time you have to think about it that it's we're preparing one brick for the whole wall that we're gonna build.
The other thing we always forget, boost a particular frequency.
Yes. Also,
Louder,
yeah.
right? All of a sudden you're saying, why isn't my mix balanced anymore? Well, you just made the harp louder.
Yeah, it's more present. When you're boosting frequency, that doesn't mean that it sounds more hi-fi. It's more present and more louder, because our ears, the human ears and also the mammal's ears, are made to get the idea that the high frequency has shorter length of the wave. So that's another way to guess, the brain to guess how close is that thing. So when you're boosting the high frequency, it's faking the ear that it has more high frequency content. That means that the thing is more present. And most of the time, that's not the point with the orchestra. The orchestra has to be all there. And if you need like a singer or something, it's going to be in front. This is the opposite between all the parts of the mix. So if you want something to be far, you're going to curve. If you want something, you're going to add a little bit. And at the end, there's going to be a natural frequency pockets. So you're going to curve for the thing that is going to be a bass line, and the thing which is a leading, like a singer or solo instruments. You see I tilted a little more in the mid frequency because this is the more typical frequency in the woodwind. They have extremely low content, and they have high content, but because they're usually back of the orchestra in the middle, we hear that high content. It's naturally made the instrument high because it has to project until the audience that sound, but it's getting milder until it's achieved, gets received by the audience. So different, and because the other people and everything is like a buffers. You got it? All the knowledge and all the experience, it's getting more and more with the recording session, because you're gonna get used to how the things are sounding in real life. And it's gonna be the same everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're gonna make a recording in national radio or in road or in Mexico in the biggest studio. The sounds and the same process and the same frequencies are the same, and the good thing and the bad thing are going to be quite the same. Only the property of the reverb is always, as we spoke, we can add some more our own. You can use a little, because you like the orchestra, you don't like the environment, but you can in orchestra in different studio because it's going to be very expensive. You're going to make a recording in Teldex, you're going to use less of their room, for example. You're going to add, because you see today, we all reverbs. So you can add everywhere. In the bigger the studio, the easiest is going to be to use the spot mics, the source for your mix. Does that sounds reasonable? Yeah. Any questions?
As you know, all the rooms, all the studios very well here. Do you have advice for particular studios, for instance? What building frequencies is there in Dolly? You were saying at 1,000 there's something perhaps. And also, do you know you talked about the delays that we should put between the Deca tree and the spot mics. Do you know some particular delays, for instance, in VNR?
I have following proposal for you. When we're gonna make a recording on 21st and 22nd, it's gonna be out of our meetings, but probably somewhere in February or at the end of January, we can meet for 1 hour for question and answers, because you're gonna get your material, you can play with it, and the more you play, the more questions might appear. And I will back just to answer, to get together for even for 1 hour and to answer you some questions, because all the studio has some properties. It's not important what's the weaker and the good parts of every studio. It's the question what you want. So that's question, it's not important. You can make the recording in a wardrobe with open. You can make a recording about. The question is what kind of you want to achieve at the end of the day. You have all the tools you need.
You mentioned before that orchestration was, I think you said 60%?
60% of the mix down.
So in a room like BNR, with a 38-piece orchestra, does that percentage rise? Now, these guys need to think more about their orchestration.
The thing that I told them, it was 50-60% is the orchestration, the arranging, the arrangement of the cue. Additional 10 to 15% is how it's played, not about the quality, about the sound of the instruments and the players, because they might play perfectly in tune and in group. The togetherness might be very good, but again, the instrument might affect an additional 10%. Additional 10% on top of this 50-60% orchestration is going to be the environment, because it's context of that environment. All music is going to sound in the context. You heard his mock-up was for something very big, lush, dreamy, smooth, and we record it in Dolly, where it's very present, bright, box, and we can achieve totally the opposite thing. So it's important. It's what you wrote and recorded. You remember for the piano, it's only 3 microphones. The piano and ribbon, for example. Recording all and don't know what's for your sound. So you have options. Today I use all the microphones for the septet. It's going to be the same with the 38, with 110, with 84 musician orchestra. Probably I'm going to use all of them. And I'm going to cut time to time. If, for example, in the middle of your cue, the woodwinds didn't play at all. Or if the brass, in the beginning, it starts with very big melodical parts, the strings only. I'm going to mute all the microphones, not all, the room mics, I'm going to leave them. Because, again, we need the full picture. Otherwise, if we start to build a puzzle without some parts, it's going to be pretty obvious that something was missing, and immediately it appears. And we don't need it. It needs everything to get up and down smoothly. We have to lie the ears of the audience that everything is getting intentional and smoothly. So that's why we're going to use the spot mics of the groups that playing, and all the time the room microphones, because the room microphones are going to give you the whole picture. And we're going to put a little more and a little less from the group and spot microphones, the thing that we need, and the thing. The thing about the live musician is that they made noises. If they play a lot the brass and suddenly there's a drop in the dynamic after full blast, there's a very tiny string section. They're breathless after this. So usually there is some noises and they putting down the instruments also. So you have to cut, you have to open, you have to cut, you have to open group of instruments to make it everything clearer and more 3D. Because if you use all the microphones, it's not only the problem of the noises that you're going to achieve. Because if the musician's not playing, the musicians make noises again. If they're playing, they made additional noises because they're moving all the time, like this or something. There is a Foley sounds also coming in. But we have to deal with that. Plus, we're gonna put a reverb. We're gonna reduce the spot mics. We're gonna add on top of the pizza sauce of prelays and fake instruments and stuff. And it's gonna be clean and good. The noises are not the worst thing that might happen, because first of all, noises are gonna be totally inaudible. Second, listen at the old of the great E.T. or Indiana Jones. If you only the scores, you're gonna listen a lot of noises. That's the life. That's the real life. It was before the days of the big stacks of tracks with samples and effects, and it was only 20 microphones and 80 musicians in one hall. So deal with that. You have to live with that. The perfection didn't exist. What is perfect for you is imperfect for someone else. So relax. Bye, guys. Have a rest, because probably you have something else after this. You should. You pay for that.
Thank you, Vlad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That's also the day before your session.
Next Friday, actually.
Right. So these are going to be Vlad is going to work with you guys in small groups or individually?
No. So two small groups. We're gonna divide the class on two groups, because you're gonna need a time before the recording day on 21st. It's gonna be on 20th of December.
Right.
So you're gonna be uptight. So we decide with Andy to split it. Half of you is gonna come in the morning from 10 to 12:30. It's nearby the studio. And the other one's gonna prepare their parts, gonna print and whatever.
Right.
And after this, opposites. The second part will come here to prepare the stuff for 20th, and the first part's going to go to the
Now,
bakery.
do we want to deal on that Friday session with things like mic choice, or are you going to do mixing?
No, it's going to be up to you. My idea was to be called Entrance in Studio Technology. You have to know, when you get in the studio, what do you have there? What kind of microphones and stuff like this. But if you want, we can save, because you have 2.5 hours for group, we can save 1 hour for mixing purposes, because it's with small control room, with very good monitors, and very obvious. If you want, we can make some revision of the things that we talked about the previous 2 weeks. It's up to you. Make a decision and let me know.
We don't have time, for example, I was just thinking, so they just did their 22-piece string session, right?
Strings.
And you guys have not mixed that yet, right? Well, we don't have time to deal with individual mixes on this, right?
For 2.5 hours, Entrance in Studio Technology plus individual mixes, I don't believe. We can make the following thing. We can make one template which is going to work for everybody, because it's the same setup.
Nice.
That would be great.
Please choose one of yours. It has to be complex.
One of
Yes, one of your 22 strings.
I would use the strings, because that'll give you a pretty straight route to getting a template mix.
Yeah.
And you guys will choose amongst yourselves a representative piece.
Complex house with like a lot of rhythm.
It's up to you. It's not exactly democracy that we're living in, but you're gonna vote. Cool.
And by the way, this little studio, the bakery, which is what
Pecarnato,
is,
yes.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
it's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's our backyard studio.
This is my school's bakery. So in the school, you need to have a breakfast and pastry and stuff like this for the school. That was the bakery for 50 years for my school. My school is nearby also.
He means literally. It was a bakery.
Yes, and a friend of mine, he's from Plovdiv, a very beautiful ancient city. He's 6,000 years old, the city. a friend of mine came in Sofia, and together with another friend, because they need joint venture for money, they took the place because it was in ruins. It didn't work the last 10 years before it's founded the studio. It was closed. They took it, they buy it, and they rebuild it totally from inside. And the bakery now is a studio. And they keep the name, bakery.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vlad.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. You too, it's a band from Ireland.
Santiago.
Is our session the 21st?